Today, Spotify has over 600 million users across 180 countries. It's worth over $75 billion and controls 31% of the global music streaming market. Daniel Ek, its co-founder, is worth over $4 billion and is one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in Europe. But in 2006, Daniel Ek was 23 years old, broke, and sleeping on a friend's couch in Stockholm. The music industry was collapsing from piracy. Apple's iTunes had a stranglehold on digital music. Every major record label refused to talk to him. And the app he was building, unlimited music streaming for a monthly fee, was considered technically impossible and financially insane by almost everyone in the industry. This is the story of how two Swedish students with no money, no connections, and no experience in the music industry built Spotify, survived near bankruptcy multiple times, forced the most powerful companies in entertainment to surrender, and created a product that changed how 600 million people experience music. It's a story of obsession, desperation, and a refusal to accept that something was impossible, just because everyone said so. Daniel Ek was born on February 21, 1983, in Regsved, a working-class immigrant neighborhood in southern Stockholm. His parents were working class, his father was absent, and his mother worked multiple jobs to support the family. Daniel was small, quiet, and obsessed with computers from an early age. At age 13, Daniel started building websites for local businesses. He taught himself HTML, JavaScript, and web design by reading online tutorials and experimenting for hours after school. By 14, he was charging clients for web development work. By 16, he was making more money than his teachers. By 18, he had dropped out of high school to focus on his tech career full-time. Daniel was brilliant but directionless. He worked at a series of Swedish tech startups, making good money but never feeling satisfied. In 2005, at age 22, he sold his advertising tech company for several $1 million. Suddenly, he was a millionaire. He bought a red Ferrari, rented a luxury apartment, threw parties, and tried to live like a tech playboy. It made him miserable. Daniel later described that period as the lowest point of his life. He realized money and status didn't make him happy. What made him happy was building things, solving problems, creating products that people loved. He sold the Ferrari, gave up the luxury lifestyle, and started thinking about what he actually wanted to do with his life. The answer came from an unlikely place, Pirate Bay. In the mid-2000s, Pirate Bay was the largest file-sharing site in the world. Millions of people used it to download music, movies, and software illegally. The music industry was in freefall. Album sales had dropped 50% from their peak. Record labels were suing teenagers for thousands of dollars. Digital piracy was killing the industry. But Daniel had a different perspective. He saw Pirate Bay as proof of what people actually wanted. Instant access to any song, anytime, no friction, no waiting, no limits. The problem wasn't that people didn't want to pay for music. The problem was that legal options were terrible. Buying CDs was expensive and inconvenient. iTunes made you pay per song and locked you into Apple's ecosystem. Pirate Bay was illegal, buggy, and full of viruses, but it gave users what they wanted, everything instantly for free. Daniel thought, what if we could create a legal version of Pirate Bay? What if we could offer unlimited music, instant access, better quality, no viruses, and make it so easy and seamless that people would pay for it instead of pirating? Everyone he talked to said it was impossible. The technology didn't exist. The record labels would never agree. The economics didn't make sense. But Daniel couldn't let it go. He became obsessed with the idea. In 2006, Daniel met Martin Lorentzon, a Swedish entrepreneur 13 years older than Daniel, who had made millions selling his advertising tech company. Martin was looking for his next project. Daniel pitched him the music streaming idea. Martin thought it was insane, but he liked Daniel's intensity and believed that if anyone could solve the impossible technical and business challenges, it was this obsessive 23-year-old. They decided to build it. Martin invested his own money and became co-founder and initial CEO. Daniel became the product visionary and technical lead. They rented a small apartment in Stockholm and started coding. They called the company Spotify, a combination of spot and identify. though Daniel later admitted they just made it up and liked how it sounded. The technical challenge was enormous. Streaming high-quality audio to millions of users simultaneously without lag or buffering required technology that didn't exist yet. iTunes worked by downloading songs, which was slow but reliable. Streaming required real-time data transfer, adaptive byte rates, sophisticated caching, and a peer-to-peer architecture that could handle massive scale. Daniel and the small team he assembled worked 16-hour days for months, building the core streaming technology from scratch. They used a hybrid model combining peer-to-peer file sharing, like Pirate Bay, with centralized servers. When you played a song on Spotify, you weren't just streaming from Spotify's servers. You were also pulling data from other users' devices who had recently played that song. It was brilliant, efficient, and completely unprecedented. By late 2006, they had a working prototype. It was rough, buggy, and had a tiny catalog because they didn't have any licensing deals yet. But it worked. You could search for a song and start playing it in under 300 milliseconds. No waiting, no downloading, just instant music. Daniel and Martin knew they had something special. Now came the hard part, convincing record labels to license their music. The music industry in 2006 was in full panic mode. CD sales were collapsing. Piracy was rampant. iTunes had gutted their pricing power by forcing them to sell singles for 99 cents. Record executives were desperate, paranoid, and deeply skeptical of any new tech company promising to save them. Daniel and Martin flew to London, New York, and Los Angeles, pitching Spotify to every major label: Universal, Sony, Warner, EMI. The response was almost universally negative. Record executives didn't believe streaming could work. They didn't trust Swedish tech entrepreneurs. They were terrified of losing control. Some meetings lasted less than 5 minutes before executives walked out. But Daniel had one advantage. He was persistent to the point of obsession. He flew back to the same cities, pitched the same executives, refined the demo, and refused to take no for an answer. He understood something the labels didn't. They had no choice. Piracy was destroying them. iTunes was controlling them. Spotify was offering a third option that could actually save the industry. Slowly, painfully, Daniel started to make progress. He got a few smaller labels to agree to limited licensing deals. He used those deals to prove the model worked. Spotify launched a limited beta in Sweden in October 2008. Invite only, Swedish catalog only. The response was explosive. Users loved it. The streaming technology worked flawlessly. Word spread fast. But Spotify was burning cash at a terrifying rate. Streaming music is expensive. Every time someone plays a song, Spotify has to pay the rights holder. So, with no revenue model yet, the company was hemorrhaging money. Martin had invested millions of his own fortune. They raised a small seed round from Swedish investors, but they were months away from bankruptcy. In 2009, Spotify secured a breakthrough. They convinced the major labels, Universal, Sony, Warner, to license their entire catalogs in exchange for equity stakes in Spotify and per-stream royalty payments. The labels were desperate enough to take the gamble. They gave Spotify access to tens of millions of songs. Spotify launched across Europe in 2009. Demand was overwhelming. Millions of users signed up in the first months. But there was a problem. Spotify's free tier, supported by ads, was so popular that almost nobody was paying for the premium, ad-free version. The company was paying millions in royalties, but making almost nothing in revenue. They were weeks away from running out of money. Daniel made a controversial decision. He restricted the free tier, limiting how much music you could stream for free each month. Users hated it. Growth slowed, but it worked. People started converting to paid subscriptions. Revenue started coming in. Spotify survived. By 2011, Spotify had 10 million users and 2.5 million paying subscribers. They were still losing money, but investors believed in the vision. They raised $100 million from investors including Sean Parker, the co-founder of Napster, the original music piracy platform. Parker understood better than anyone how streaming could reshape the music industry. In 2011, Spotify launched in the United States, the most important music market in the world. It was a disaster at first. Apple's iTunes dominated. Pandora had the streaming market locked down. American users didn't understand why they should pay for Spotify when they already had free options. But Daniel stuck to the vision. Spotify was better. Unlimited music, instant access, personalized playlists, social sharing. The product was so good that once people tried it, they couldn't go back. Slowly, user growth accelerated. By 2012, Spotify had 20 million users. By 2013, 40 million. By 2015, 75 million. The music industry, which had resisted Spotify for years, now depended on it. Streaming became the dominant way people listened to music. iTunes declined. Piracy dropped. Record labels, which had spent years fighting Spotify, now praised it as the savior of the industry. Spotify's royalty payments became the primary revenue source for most artists. But Spotify still wasn't profitable. The company was spending billions on royalties, technology infrastructure, and expansion. Growth was explosive, but margins were razor thin. Every investor meeting involved Daniel explaining why Spotify was losing hundreds of millions of dollars despite having 150 million users. In 2018, Spotify went public on the New York Stock Exchange through a direct listing, skipping the traditional IPO process. The company was valued at $26 billion. Daniel A.K., the broke 23-year-old who had slept on a friend's couch 12 years earlier, was now worth over $3 billion. Martin Lorentzon was worth over $4 billion. They had built one of the most valuable tech companies in Europe. Today, Spotify has over 600 million users and 236 million paying subscribers. It generates over $13 billion in annual revenue. The company is finally profitable after years of losses. Daniel Ek remains CEO and the driving force behind the company's vision. But Spotify's success came at a cost. The company's relationship with artists is deeply controversial. Most musicians earn fractions of a cent per stream. A song needs millions of plays to generate meaningful income. Critics argue Spotify has devalued music, making it nearly impossible for artists to make a living without touring and merchandise sales. Daniel has defended Spotify's model, arguing that streaming saved the music industry from collapse, and that more money is flowing to artists now than during the piracy era. But the debate continues. Spotify's dominance has reshaped the entire music ecosystem, for better and worse. The story of Spotify is the story of two entrepreneurs who refused to accept that something was impossible. Daniel Ek saw a problem, music piracy, and a solution that everyone said couldn't work. He spent years building the technology, convincing skeptical executives, surviving near bankruptcy, and perfecting a product that changed how the world experiences music. Spotify didn't just compete with iTunes. It crushed it. It didn't just reduce piracy. It made piracy irrelevant. It didn't just survive the music industry's resistance. It forced the industry to adapt or die. Daniel Ek is not a typical tech founder. He's not flashy, charismatic, or a master marketer. He's obsessive, technical, and relentlessly focused on product. He built Spotify by solving problems that seemed unsolvable and refusing to give up when everyone told him to quit. Today, every time you open Spotify and instantly play any song ever recorded, you're experiencing the result of two broke Swedish students who believed they could build something better. And they were right. Now tell me, did you know the full story of how Spotify was built? Leave your thoughts in the comments and suggest other startup stories you'd like to see. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support our work covering the most fascinating stories in tech and business history.